Gillette Public Access Television presents North by Northeast, a news magazine about Northeast Wyoming. On September 25th, the Campbell County School District held dedications celebrating the opening of 2 new replacement schools in the district. The first dedication was Westwood High School, which is the district's alternative school, and featured many speakers including U.S. Senator Mike Enzi.
I know that sometimes a person dreams of maybe being a carpenter, and that's a tremendous job, and we're going to need more and more carpenters. But you know, some of those that want to be carpenters are going to discover through this school that they could also be the architect. They could design a facility like this and see it to its completion. That's the dreaming, the believing, the discovering that this building's about. So students, make every opportunity available to yourself. Learn as much as you can. Figure out what you want to focus on. And remember that every single job out there is important. There are a lot of people that run down sometimes jobs.
After the dedication, guests were allowed to tour the school and see what the new building had to offer. Jeremy Harder had the chance to speak with Westwood Principal Kelly Moorhead about the school's design.
I know this is a school that you guys have been waiting on for a little bit, but explain a little bit about what this one sets, or what's different about this one versus the last one.
Everything. When we went through the process, they let us have a lot to do with designing the building, and a lot of the things that the kids had said they wanted was more natural light. And if you look at the windows, and the architect of this building is just amazing. So they took everything that these kids talked about, and somewhere it's implemented in this. We have toilets that aren't for elementary kids. The technology abilities. You know, the old building had it was old. It was ready for something different. So this is just amazing. State of the art.
Even though the students of Westwood have a new school, they find what they are learning inside its walls to be the most important thing.
How long have you been a student at Westwood, and what Westwood has done for you?
Okay. I've just recently came to Westwood. I've been here since the beginning of the quarter. I recently came over from Wright Junior Senior High School. I drive down here every day to finish high school. But I went from failing out of high school. I really never did very well. I had a problem getting my homework done and getting everything handed in to here I'm doing actually very well. I have straight A's, and I was selected as one of the honor students, I guess they would say. But Westwood has been really good for me. It's given me an opportunity to achieve my high school diploma, which has been my goal for quite some time now. I decided that dropping out is not a good thing for anyone to do. It's just going to make life a lot harder than it really needs to be.
Campbell County School Board member Lisa Durgan discussed the benefit of having the school near Gillette College and the relationship they have with them as well.
One thing that kind of went into the new location of the facility is the relationship with Gillette College and kind of promoting that. Talk a little bit about that.
We are so excited to have such a close proximity to the tech center and to the college. And the reason being is because we want these students into those facilities at an earlier age. I think anyone who graduates from high school is a little bit intimidated to go to the next level, to go to the college level. It's a little bit of a scary thing. And this way, with this proximity, we can take a little bit of that fear out of students who may not have even considered it in the past. If they have considered it, this takes the fear out of it. And if they haven't considered it, maybe they think, hey, I can do this. I've been there. It's easy. That part of it is taken out of the equation, so they can just focus on what their goals are, and then maybe even expand those goals some. So the proximity is fabulous, and the Gillette College has been outstanding in helping us and cooperating with us into building those programs. They're working with us daily.
The second dedication was Lakeview Elementary, where school board member Ann Oakes talked about the importance of education.
But we all know that what matters the most in a school is what goes on inside the 4 walls. Would the current staff members of Lakeview please stand? These folks, please remain standing for just a minute. These folks care about our kids. They provide a wonderful, enriching environment for our students to grow. This new building provides the setting for the incredible educational adventures which are to come. Thank you.
Coming up on North by Northeast, Campbell County Health's new cardiac cath lab. Hi, and we're back with George Byers. He is the Vice President of Government and Community Relations for Rare Element Resources. George, why don't you tell us a little bit about where Rare Element Resources came from?
Well, the company exists because of the fact that up here 9 miles due north of Sundance, Wyoming, where we are today, is one of the most unique mineral deposits in probably the whole Western Hemisphere, and it's the Bear Lodge Critical Rare Earth Deposit. The deposit was initially discovered back in the late 1940s, and over a series of explorations and companies that came and went over a half of a century, more and more information began to be learned about the unique mineral assemblage you've got up here. And it was finally determined that you've got a very unique deposit of rare earths. So Rare Element Resources was created in 2004 to explore and take to production this very unique mineral property.
Okay, so I guess this would be a good time to let everybody know, what are these rare elements?
Well, rare earths, and I like to use my prop, my cell phone. My cell phone cannot function without at least 9 rare earths. This is a Samsung, others are made elsewhere by other companies, but the Japanese call rare earths the seeds of technology. Rare earth elements, and there are 15 of them, elements 57 to 71 on your periodic table. I'm sure
which we all know very well.
You have a periodic table on your refrigerator door. But elements 57 to 71, they have 3 unique characteristics. They have phosphorescent characteristics. The fluorescent lighting above us, every fluorescent light in the world has europium, and we believe we have the best europium deposit in the world at Bear Lodge. So phosphorescent properties, catalytic properties, fluid cracking catalysts. Every refinery in the world has to have lanthanum and cerium to help crack crude into other useful fuels. And the third is magnetic, and tiny magnets are made possible by 3 of the elements, and these enable things like cell phones to work. The problem today, China produces over 90% of all of them. There are only 2 primary rare earth mines in the world that are not in China. One's in Western Australia, one's in the Mojave Desert of California. We will be only the 3rd when we get into production in 2017.
And so that leads, obviously, so China has control over a large portion of the rare earths that are out there on the market right now. What kind of power does that give them?
In about 1986, Chinese Premier Deng Xiaoping made a comment, the Middle East has oil, China has rare earths. And he just sort of let that comment hang out there. He didn't say what was next, but he just let everybody else think about it, and what the implication was. And we can use rare earths, we China, can use rare earths as an economic weapon. So we saw this sort of happen in 2010. October 2010, China embargoed all rare earth exports from China. And it sent a panic into the technology world. Prices of some elements went up between 5,000 and 6,000% in just a few weeks. They've all come back down now, but that's the type of pricing power and economic power China holds.
Now, we've talked a lot about the importance of this on a global scale and on a national scale. How about locally? What will this site do for Sundance, for Crook County, for Northeast Wyoming?
Well, it's going to bring in some job potential, obviously, and it's going to bring in tax revenues. We're going to have 2 pieces of the project. One will be a small mine, and I want to emphasize small. In terms of mines, this is going to be a quarry-sized operation. It's not going to be like a Powder River Basin coal mine. It's not going to be like, if people are familiar with copper mines in Nevada or Arizona, or gold mines in Nevada. It's not going to be on that scale. It's going to be a small mine. but it's going to be a very unique commodity coming out of that mine. Down in Upton, Wyoming, we will have a very unique chemical plant. We call it the hydrometallurgy plant, where the ore is going to be reduced into a very high purity concentrate, 97% plus pure. We have tested our process at labs in the US and in Canada and in Australia. This process has produced a concentrate that's very valuable, very pure. We have sent it out to potential customers saying, here's what our results show, tell us what you think, and they've all come back and agreed, yes, you have good stuff here.
And just recently, you were asked to join a rather unique group. I believe it was the Critical Materials or Critical Minerals Institute. Is that correct?
Yes, it's called the Critical Materials Institute. This is a unit of the U.S. Department of Energy. It involves, it's headed by the Department of Energy's Ames Laboratory at Ames, Iowa, on Iowa State University's campus, but it's got three other national labs: Lawrence Livermore National Lab in California, Oak Ridge National Lab in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and the Idaho National Lab in Idaho Falls are the four labs that are involved, but it includes other companies, companies you may have heard of like General Electric, and we have been invited to join. And the reason, again, I'll go back, the reason we were invited to join the Critical Materials Institute is because the U.S. DOE, the Department of Energy, understands a couple of things about our project. Number one, we have a process that is exceptional and gives a very high purity product. But number two, and it goes back to the periodic table, all rare earth deposits aren't really created equal. What we have at Bear Lodge are 5 critical rare earth elements that are really the ones that are of the highest value and that are in the most demand. And unfortunately, China produces essentially 100% of them. So these 5 rare earth elements, principally magnet elements, are the ones that are most susceptible to supply disruption. We will produce all 15 elements, but we have a higher grade of 5 of them than the other 2 non-Chinese deposits in the world. So our process, our high grade, and the fact that we have 5 critical elements, and fourth being how far we are along in the permitting process, that those 4 ingredients have led us to be invited to join the Critical Materials Institute.
You mentioned that it's going to be a small, quarry-sized mine, and that it's not going to be similar to the copper mines in Nevada and other places. What is it about this facility that is going to make it different?
Well, what's going to make it, well, one of the reasons it's going to be so small is the ore body is small to begin with. It's the throat of about a 40 million year old volcano is what is containing the rare earths. The surface expression of the throat of that volcano is not great to begin with, but we will have a small mine, a plant that will upgrade slightly the ore. The ore is, the term is friable. Where the rare earths concentrate, it's like the consistency of a hard dirt clod. You can take it in your fist and crumble it, so we're not going to have a very expensive mill. We will truck that material to Upton, 10 or so trucks a day, just over the highway, sand, gravel type trucks. We can recycle our chemicals down at Upton, recycle our water. The plant will be at the hill, will be a zero discharge facility, and so will the plant at Upton.
So by a zero discharge facility?
Zero discharge, I'm talking about water, yeah. And we've got a very elegant process that we've filed 2 patent applications on. A third is out there. One of these days we'll probably file patent protection for it too. But it allows us to recycle our water, recycle almost all of our reagents that we will use down at the plant at Upton. This will keep our operating expenses low. It will keep our capital expenditure for the mine is going to be slightly less than $300 million. There are other projects out there in the world that are coming on, and they have CapEx proposed. One project is $1.5 billion, one is $2.6 billion. We're going to come in at a fraction of those. And again, we're farther along in the whole process, in the whole permitting process, plus we have a metallurgy process that works. So those things make us different, plus the fact that we have those 5 critical elements in high enough grade that we can be an answer to the Chinese dominance, particularly in those 5 elements.
Excellent. Well, George, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
This week's community calendar. Cam-Plex Heritage Center in Gillette will have the Pink Floyd Laser Spectacular on October 10th at 8 p.m. For tickets and for more information, visit www.cam-plex.com. Biketoberfest will be happening on Saturday, October 11th at 2 p.m. at the Sheridan County Fairgrounds Exhibit Hall. In its 4th year, Biketoberfest is a major fundraiser for the Sheridan Community Land Trust that offers both mountain bike races and trail runs, as well as an after party. For more information, go to sheridanwyoming.org.
Later on North by Northeast, a trip on the West Texas Trail.
This week's featured pets come to us from the Laramie Peak Humane Society in Douglas. We have Apollo, a 4-year-old male neuter cat. He is very outgoing and loving. We also have Crystal, an 8-month-old spayed border collie mix. She is up to date on her shots and microchipped. She is very kind. To adopt either of these pets or for more information, you can contact the shelter at 307-358-6475, or you can visit petfinder.com, and please adopt a pet.
And so that's why we're here today, to get things started and to get you an opportunity to comment on the EPA regulations.
The 2014 Affordable Energy Rally was held at Cam-Plex Plaza on Thursday, September 25th. The event was sponsored by the Campbell County Chamber of Commerce and the Campbell County Economic Development Corporation.
Well, the real reason we decided to do this is because we feel like that people need to have an opportunity to hear about the facts, and then they need to be able to take those facts and they need to apply them and tell them to other people. And so we decided to do this because we want people to know that there is an avenue for them to go through.
To the paper after he got back.
U.S. Senators Mike Enzi and John Barrasso were in attendance.
You know, one of the worries they've got out there, they think the coal dust blows off of these trains and makes everything black. And of course, with 92 trains a day coming into Campbell County, if that were the case, this would be black. But I keep pointing out to people that you never let blow away what you're trying to sell.
We always are talking about energy security for our country, economic growth for our families and our communities, and environmental stewardship. And Wyoming is number 1 in each of those areas. We do it right. We've done it right since we've been a state, over 120 years.
Local public officials spoke to the crowd as well.
The City of Gillette and our partners in Northeast Wyoming will continue to have elected officials and staffers from Washington, D.C. That's one thing. Public awareness and rallies like this are another. But we can't have a rally like this every day. So I encourage every one of you to educate 10 people about Powder River Basin coal and energy.
We must remain vigilant in our support and investment with state-of-the-art technology and the implementation of best practices that will meet our energy needs, sustain employment and high-paying jobs, keep electrical costs low, build our national economy, and effectively address global climate change concerns.
District 32 Representative Noreen Kasparek took time on her birthday to lend her support to the cause.
And I think that we need to keep taking our story out. We need to tell it one-on-one, one person at a time. The visits that the City of Gillette has been organizing, with help from the governor's office and legislature are important. We need to reach people one person at a time. Every person that I've met from Washington, from Oregon, that have come out here have been amazed by what they see, amazed by the way our industries conduct themselves, how clean it is, how pristine our countryside is. We need to keep telling that story one day at a time.
Governor Matt Mead, a vocal proponent of challenging EPA regulations, made a stop at Cam-Plex Plaza to let people know what he is doing on a legal level.
And it's frustrating for us, and we have, I think, 13 or 14 individual EPA lawsuits. A couple weeks ago, we sued the state of Oregon when they refused to have progress on a coal port there. And it's just, it's aggravating because as we recognize what coal means to this state and to this country, we need everybody on board, because it's not just heating and cooling our home, it's the cost of our food, it's the cost of our transportation, it's the cost of our homes. And it's the fastest growing energy source. Coal's the fastest growing energy source in the world, and we need to be on board with it. And so all these lawsuits that we have, that's part of it, but we need people, whether they're involved in the coal industry or not, to get on board with this challenge, because it's not only a Wyoming issue, frankly, it's a United States issue.
Dan Byers, the Senior Director for Policy at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute for 21st Century Energy, flew in from Virginia and had these words to say on what individuals can do to let the EPA know how the new rule will impact them personally.
There's lots of websites where they can help you and find the right way to kind of click in and send a letter. Our own website, energyxxi.org/EPA, energyxxi.org/EPA. You can go, there's sample language there. You can send a letter to them and fill up the docket. And again, this is important because EPA actually has to read these and respond to these, and again, to balance out the records so that when the rule is finalized and when they go to implementation, it's clear that it wasn't one-sided in support, and the other side tends to win and sort of load up the docket with letters of support through mass mailings and that kind of things. We sort of do a little more direct, grassroots, individualized push.
Recently, we spoke with cardiologist Dr. Stamato and Dr. Shaw about the cardiac cath lab that opened up at Campbell County Health a couple months ago. Dr. Stamato and Shaw are the first cardiologists living and working in Gillette. Now, what is cardiology? Well, cardiology is the specialty that deals with disorders of the heart. And here is Dr. Stamato and Shaw explaining in further detail what they do in the cath lab.
We're here to talk about specifically the cath lab a little bit. And maybe the first good question is, what is a cardiac cath lab?
Well, a cardiac cath lab is a specialized X-ray room. Okay. So the key component of the cath lab is this piece of equipment here, which is an X-ray unit that allows us to take X-ray pictures of the arteries to the heart and the rest of the arteries to any area of body action.
Okay, sounds great. And now, like I said, it's here at Campbell County Health. And what kind of type of procedures? You did talk about a little bit, obviously, going into the heart. Maybe go into a little further detail on what kind of procedures you do in here.
So most commonly what we do is called a cardiac catheterization. And what that is we take a small tube, a catheter, that goes through the artery and really up to the arteries of the heart, near where they begin, the aorta. And then we use that to actually take a picture of the arteries of the heart while this camera is moving around the patient. And so we can get different angles of arteries and look at them in different points of view. So when we do these catheterizations, sometimes we come in through the groin or through the right femoral artery, and we go up with the catheter up the aorta, and it comes around, you can't see the top, but it comes around over the aortic arch and comes down to the aortic root. And right here, the catheter is actually, the tip of it is engaged into the right coronary artery, which is what you're seeing here. So while this catheter is in place there, we have a device that we can inject a small amount of contrast that actually goes into the artery and fills it. And using this technology with the camera moving in different angles, we're able to actually see if people have a blockage in the arteries of their heart.
So this is the right coronary artery of someone's heart, and it's a normal artery. You can see that it's large and that it has lots of branches and feeds a lot of heart muscle here. In this artery, we don't see any significant blockages. This is an angiogram of a right coronary artery, which has a lot of plaque and narrowing in it. And you can see this whole area here is filled in. It doesn't look as large and as open as the other artery as it does here or here. And that's actually a plaque of cholesterol and fat that is narrowing this artery. This is the kind of plaque that will cause a heart attack and completely block the artery. But when that happens, we take the same catheter and we feed a small wire down the artery and then put a balloon down inside the blockage and open that up, and a stent is just a mesh of metal that stays in the artery to hold it open so that this narrowing can be returned to normal.
A lot of times while we're doing these procedures, we also have other information that's up on the screen that helps us to identify how the patient's doing. Down here you can see that there's a continuous tracing of the patient's electrogram, which tells us how the electrical activity of the heart is. And normally during a case, we're able to use pressure measurements there to see if, when we put the catheter in the artery here, if there is any significant decrease in blood pressure as a result of that, or if the patient's blood pressure itself is going down. And these are very valuable tools that we use while we're doing the procedure.
When we perform a heart catheterization, it depends on what we're going to do and what work needs to be done. But if a patient were to, say, present to the emergency room with an acute heart attack, we would want them in this room from the emergency room in less than 30 minutes. We then go and take the angiograms, and we move quite quickly during a heart attack. And so our goal is to get a stent in and get the artery open in another 30 minutes after that. A full test can generally take between 30 minutes and 60 minutes. And then if we go ahead and need to put stents in, that can take another hour or two, depending on how many stents we need to put in, how much work needs to be done to repair the arteries. The patients are then recovered here for a little while. This procedure is done under what's called sedation. So the patients, not intubated, not under anesthesia, but they're made pleasantly sleepy. We're able to talk to them, we're able to wake them up. If it is just an outpatient angiogram, we're just going to take pictures, those patients go home the same day. If we do the heart catheterization from the wrist, they actually are up and walking within an hour or two and able to go home and carry on fairly normal activities that day. If we need to put a stent in, we will keep those patients overnight, at least one night in the hospital. They're able to go home the day after the procedure, and we ask those patients to rest up at home for another few days before returning to full activities. But it is really amazing for many patients how quickly they can return to normal activity.
Dr. Stamato and Shaw are working closely with local physicians, and if you'd like to make an appointment or if you have questions, you can contact the cardiology department at 307-688-3700.
I'm here with Cynthia Clont. She is the director of the West Texas Trail Museum in Moorcroft, Wyoming. So to start with, Cynthia, why don't you tell us what is the West Texas Trail?
Well, the West Texas Trail is a museum that we focus, kind of highlight on the trail that started back in Texas, moved up here because of the Belle Fourche River. We had a lot of grass and water, and so they came over here, kind of settled in here, and moved those trails up into Montana, Miles City, Montana.
Okay, and of course they were driving cattle, correct?
Oh yes, they were. At one time in the 1866, there was a herd of cattle that came in at 800,000 of them. It was about a 1,700-mile trek, and it would take 2 to 3 months. So can you imagine letting your young... They had their young children going, and it was quite an adventure for the cowboys.
Oh, I'm sure. How about the museum itself? How did the West Texas Trail Museum get started?
Well, there's a young man, and he's young because he's 93 years old, and he tells a story about how in the community, Mrs. Zimmerscheid would approach all the different members of the community saying, I've got all this stuff stored in my barn, in my shed, in my garage, and I would really like to see a museum take place here in Moorcroft. So they kept having these meetings, and finally, one of the gentlemen pulled a committee together, and this was back in the early 1980s. And they had a meeting, and thus came the Helen Robinson Zimmerscheid Museum.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. So through the course of the years, it did become the West Texas Trail Museum. And that was to highlight more of the fact that that's kind of how the town grew. It used to be called LaBelle.
Really?
Yes, LaBelle. It was about 4 miles west of Moorcroft, and it got a little corrupt with all of the cowboys, and they had a little post office there, and they're like, we don't think this is, quite how we want to run things. So they moved it a little bit west, or a little bit east, and that's how Moorcroft kind of got its start. So at one time, it was also the biggest shipping point for the railroad right here in Moorcroft. So people came down here, they homesteaded, some of them went back to Texas, but that's kind of the tale of the West Texas Trail Museum.
So Cynthia, why don't you tell us about some of the exhibits that you have here at the West Texas Trail Museum?
Yes, well, about a year ago when I first started, I joke about it that we had, I walked in, they said, here's your keys, here are the lights, and then the following week they started building the addition to our museum. So I have spent probably a good portion of my time more with the physical aspect of the building, getting it into shape, getting it painted, getting the carpet replaced, and now we have been able to put our exhibits on display more in a uniformed way. In the front part of the museum, we have more of the Texas Trail. That's with the, well, you can see them over there. Yeah. So we focus more on the Texas Trail, and then as you go into the museum, we try to highlight more what Moorcroft was like. We have a mercantile store, we have a little tool shop and a little tack shop, and when you go around the trail down the hall, you'll enter into the bigger part of the museum, which is our addition. And then we highlight more of the Moorcroft.
Okay.
And we're trying to keep the area in that section open for our events, which we do have a Heritage Roundup coming up September 13th. So we try to highlight more of that aspect and have events, and we're willing to rent out our conference room and also this area. So that's our focus there.
Excellent. What are some of your favorite portions of the museum?
Oh, without a doubt. My favorites are the chuck wagons. We have 2 chuck wagons. One of our chuck wagons is where we display our items that we sell. The other one is the cook stove that we just received. It's a 1925 cook stove. Wow. It's beautiful. It came in filled with grease and rust, and one of our volunteers cleaned it up. It's absolutely beautiful. And I love the picture of Moorcroft when it was a town in 1921. It's about 20 feet long. Those are 3 of some of my favorites.
What are some of the more popular things that guests, when they come in, that they like to see?
Well, first of all, we get a lot of people off the interstate when they see West Texas. We get a lot of Texans come in. They love the display that has that talks about the trail and the cowboys. And if you like archaeology, we have a little section there that we opened up, and there are those who just, that's where they target immediately. We have the Bauer display, and if you're fond of the rodeo, those are some of the people who enjoy that. And behind us, we have a highlight. And this came from a local gentleman who started working art, woodworking and wood carving after he retired in his late 60s. And he's now in his, I think he's mid to late 70s. And so we highlight that, and that's my goal, is to have a section where you can highlight your local artists.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds fantastic. Let everybody know, when is the West Texas Trail Museum open?
We are open Monday through Fridays, 9 to 5. And if you want, a tour on the weekend, absolutely give us a call.
Wonderful. And some of your special events, how would people find out about that?
Well, you can go to the Moorcroft Chamber of Commerce. We're on there. You just type in West Texas Trail and it pulls it right up. And we're really quite advertised in some of the local brochures. Gillette has some information. Even Rockpile Museum has information on us. We have 3 museums in Crook County, so we kind of try to share some of our advertising with Hewlett, Sundance, and Moorcroft.
Are you utilizing some social media like Facebook?
Oh, absolutely. You get on West Texas Trail Museum, and I absolutely am on Facebook.
All right. Well, Cynthia, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.